Okay, so hello and welcome to Itentive Healthcare Solutions webinar. We're excited to share our next-gen add-on solution, RefundManager, with you today. My name is Chelsea Grover, and I'm the Marketing Communications Coordinator for Itentive. I'd like to take a moment to explain the process for today's presentation. First, I'd like to mention that this webinar will be recorded. We'll be sending out a copy of this recording along with the slides within the next week. Next, for those of you who aren't familiar with Itentive, I wanted to share a bit of who we are with you. We specialize specifically in next-gen healthcare. We're good at getting data into, out of, around, and through next-gen. Basically, our goal in life is to make delighted clients by helping them get the absolute most out of their next-gen software investment. We're passionate about providing solutions for our healthcare provider partners, which in turn help them to improve patient care, enhance the patient experience, and maintain a financially healthy practice. To sum it up, we do everything next-gen. Along with RefundManager, we also have another add-on productivity solution for NextGen, ChartGuard, which creates PDF backups of your patient charts. Next, I wanted to mention some upcoming webinars. First, on Wednesday, March 14th, we'll be presenting a webinar on transforming patient access to behavioral health using telehealth medicine. Then on March 28th, we'll be presenting a new perspective on the NextGen patient portal. I'll be sending out more information for those webinars along with registration information a week before each webinar, so keep your eyes out for that. Okay, so back to today's webinar. For audio clarity purposes, everyone's phone will remain muted throughout the entire webinar. If you experience audio issues, please use the chat box to let us know so we can resolve them. And again, questions may be entered in the questions box. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our presenters for today. Tom Seco is Itentive's Business Development Manager, and Joe Schultz is Director of Product Solutions at Itentive. So Tom, I'm going to go ahead and pass the webinar off to you. Feel free to get started when you're ready.
All right, thank you very much, Chelsea. So thank you for joining us today to learn more about streamlining and automating the credit balance handling refund check processing with our product called RefundManager. The agenda that we'll go through today is you'll find out what RefundManager is. You'll also find out why practices buy RefundManager. You'll learn how it works. I'll turn it over to Joe Schultz, and Joe will go through a demonstration of RefundManager for you. And then we'll give you a brief overview of who Itentive is, and as Chelsea mentioned, be able to answer any questions that you have at the end of the presentation and demonstration. So with regards to a RefundManager, really the purpose of it is to make the job easier. And we do this through streamlining and automating the refund process. We looked at the process from start to finish, and we looked for points along that process where we could apply technology to the process to automate the process as well as streamline the process. We look for points where we could eliminate the data entry, and one of those points is we can integrate with your accounting application to eliminate data entry of the refund information into your accounting application to print the refund checks. We can integrate with many of the accounting applications that are out there in the system, and you'll see in our demonstration we integrate with QuickBooks in our demonstration. The overall goal of RefundManager is to increase productivity. We had gone back and talked to our clients who use RefundManager, and they came back and told us that they have been able to reallocate resources to other areas of the billing and accounts receivable area, and that they've been able to spend less time sending money out of the organization and spend more time bringing money into the organization. When we went back and talked to our clients about their use of RefundManager and what they thought of it, they had a series of comments that they came back with. Here's a few of those snippets from those comments. I won't go into each one of them, but I will focus your attention on a couple of them. The first bullet says reduce from days down to hours now. That shows that there is a productivity improvement. And if you look at the fourth bullet, it says pays for itself in time savings alone. That shows that there's a return on investment. There are some risks associated with carrying credit balances in your practice, and the risks that are associated with it are associated with Medicare, with insurance contracts, with state laws, misstated profits, and fraud. With regards to Medicare, Medicare has clauses with regards to not getting credits back to them in a timely manner where they could suspend Medicare payments. They can induce fines. You can be have issues with Medicare if you do not get credits back to them in a timely manner. Insurance contracts usually have clauses in them with regards to not getting credits back to them in a timely manner. There are state laws with regards to carrying credit balances and what to do with those credit balances. It varies from state to state. Some states, like California, require you to pay interest after 60 days. Oregon requires that you identify it as unclaimed property after 3 years. Other states have other terms with regards to unclaimed property laws as well. It can lead to class action litigation, can lead to bad press, as well as carrying credit balances without having them refunded back. There are some organizations that think that credit balances can be a source of revenue or a source of profits for them. If they don't get the credits going claimed, they can turn that back into the practice as some profits. And just as we talked about with the Medicare, the insurance contracts, and the state laws, that's not the case. With regards to fraud, we talk to practices, organizations that carry thousands, tens of thousands of instances of credit balances in their system, and those types of numbers can lead to dollar amounts of hundreds of thousands of dollars of credits. And when you're getting into the numbers, both in the number of instances as well as in the dollar amount, it can lead to some unethical activity happening. So managing your credit balances on a regular basis with a product like RefundManager minimizes all of these risks in your practice. The next few slides I'm going to go through with you are about the refund credit balance handling process itself. This is kind of a typical situation that occurs within practices and health centers. And typically when you have a credit balance, you're going to handle it in a proactive manner or a reactive manner. And by that I mean, in a reactive manner, a patient calls up and says, I have a credit on my account, I'd like to have a refund issued to me. In a proactive manner, you on some regular basis, whether it's a weekly basis, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, you're going through on a methodical basis of finding the credit balances and addressing the credit balances. In either case, whether you're doing it in a proactive manner or a reactive manner, you're going to go through a series of steps with that credit to determine what to do with that credit balance. You're going to look at the encounter details, you're going to look at the transaction details, you're going to look at the account details, and then you're going to determine if you should issue a refund or maybe apply that credit to an account that has open balance on it. So you're going to take some action with that after viewing all of the details that are there and determining what to do with it. Once you get through all of those transactions, so let's say you have 250 credit balances that you're going through to decide what to do with. You're going to go through a series of 4 steps for each of those 250. So you're going to go through in that sitting, 1,000 steps. Once you get through that process and I have identified the credits that are to be refunded, you need to get that information over to the accounting group. And how that refund information gets over to accounting happens in many different ways in many different practices in health centers. It gets over there via word of mouth. It gets over to accounting on a spreadsheet. It gets over to accounting in an email. It gets over to accounting on a piece of paper that is either handed to somebody or maybe dropped on somebody's desk. Somehow it's getting over there. But once it gets over there, the people in accounting have to enter that information into the accounting application. So they have to enter in the name of the refund recipient. They have to enter in the address, the city, the state, the zip. They have to enter in the dollar amount and maybe some other information as well. So they're going through a manual process on that end as well to get that information into the accounting application. Once they get into the accounting application, then they have to print the checks and make sure the checks are printing out okay. On the back end, some organizations enter that refund check information back into NextGen. Other organizations don't do that, but they'll enter in the check number, the check date, and the check amount back into the NextGen patient account. So that from start to finish is, as you can see, a very time-intensive process, as you know, as well as a task-intensive process with all of the data entry that occurs. With RefundManager, when, as I mentioned earlier, we took a look at the whole process from start to finish and where we could apply technology to streamline and automate the process. We looked at each one of these functions and decided what we could do to improve the process. So on the front end, we created a series of filters and search mechanisms, which you'll see in the demonstration. You'll see these search mechanisms and filters that we've created that allows the individual to quickly find where the credit balances lie on the patient accounts. And then we made it in the way that we present the information to the individual to decide what to do with that credit balance, whether to issue a refund or to apply that credit to an account that has an open balance on it, or to task it off for further research because there's just a lot of information in the account as you're going through the account details and the transaction details. You just don't have time to go through it all. You can task it out for further research in the work log manager. And then getting the information over to the accounting application, because we're able to integrate with your accounting application, getting that information over into accounting is much easier and eliminates all of the data entry that goes along with that. So no longer do you have to enter in the name of the individual, check recipient, the address, the city, the state, and the amount of the refund check. With RefundManager, we're able to move that information into accounting application seamlessly. So really all the accountant has to do is make sure that there's check paper in the printer and the checks are printing out properly. The last step in getting the refund check information back into NextGen, this is an automated process that RefundManager has that brings that information over into NextGen. So it updates the patient chart with the check number, check date, and check amount. So that information is there as well. So we call this streamlining on the front end and automation on the back end. And you'll see all three of these major actions taking place in the demonstration that Joe goes through with you. There are three modules that make up RefundManager, and you'll see these three modules in the demonstration. The credit scout module is the module that's used by the billing people to find the credit balances on the patient accounts, and then taking action on those credit balances, whether to issue a refund or to apply that credit to an account that has a balance on it, or to task it out for further research in the work log manager. The batch detective module is the module that moves the refund refund information over to the accounting application, so the accounting application can print out the refund checks. And then the importer module is the last module that you'll see in the demonstration, and this module is the one that brings the check information back over into NextGen and updates the patient charts with the check amount, check date, and check number. So just to sum up some of the benefits of RefundManager, with RefundManager, you're able to reduce the time and labor for issuing refunds through, as I mentioned, the streamlining and the automation that we've incorporated into the process. Our clients have told us that it saves them anywhere from 35 to 50% of the time, so there is significant time savings when using RefundManager across the whole process. As I mentioned, you can apply the credit balances to other encounters in the practice, so you can redistribute that credit to other encounters. As I mentioned, we integrate with the accounting applications, Refund Manager is self-documenting, so it creates notes to document the activity that's occurring along the way, and Joe will show you this in the demonstration. Refund Manager for the individuals who have multiple practices set up in NextGen, such as you have an office practice, maybe your practice or health center has a surgery center associated with it. You might have an individual that spans across the practices. So with Refund Manager, it is multi-practice aware, meaning that you can apply credits across the practices. So if you have an individual that has a credit balance in one practice, but then has an open encounter in the other practice, you can apply that credit to that encounter in the other practice. So now I'm going to do is turn it over to Joe, and Joe's going to take you through a demonstration of Refund Manager.
Great, thank you, Tom, and thank you to our attendees who are watching us today. Appreciate your time, and we're going to switch over to the demo machine here. And hopefully soon you'll be seeing NextGen Practice Management up on your screen. What I'm going to do here is, in the next 20 minutes or so, is take you through the workflow of Refund Manager. I'm going to show you the things that Tom just talked about, how to get into Refund Manager, how to find credits, how to look for good candidates to move money around when there's a credit, or to just all out refund the money and create checks. We'll actually push the money through for the refunds into the accounting system. Today we're going to use QuickBooks for our demonstration system, but as Tom mentioned, we work with a number of different accounting systems. And then we'll close the loop by pulling the check information back from QuickBooks and putting that in NextGen. So we'll show you how quick and seamless this tool makes handling credit balances. Now, when we created Refund Manager 13 years ago, back in 2005, one of our goals was to have it be as integrated as possible with NextGen. So we took the time to register it into the NextGen add-on menu to make it look for the environment that you're in NextGen. So if you're in NG Test, it'll run against NG Test. If you're in Prod, it'll run against Prod. It'll carry forward your user ID and practice ID. This helps make it more seamless to use. In fact, a lot of the paradigm we use in Refund Manager with the right mouse and the pop-up menus are just like NextGen, so that if you're used to using NextGen Practice Management, you can easily get into Refund Manager and get running very quickly. So today for our walkthrough, we're going to go ahead and cover the the Credit Scout, which is where you find the credits that have basically potential for either being distributed to other places where money's owed or be refunded. So we're going to spend the most of our time in here in the Credit Scout, but then once we have credits that are turned into refunds and we have those in a NextGen batch and we want to get them into the accounting system, we're going to jump over to the Batch Detective and we're going to use that to export them out to the accounting system. In the case of QuickBooks, it talks to the accounting system directly. Some of the other accounting systems do that, and some of them we use a file that gets moved from Refund Manager over to the accounting system and back. But for this one today, we're going to go ahead and do a direct interface into QuickBooks using the Batch Detective. And then once we've printed the checks in QuickBooks, we're going to go ahead and import the check information back into NextGen. So if you think about that diagram, that kind of flow chart that Tom showed you, we're going to go through those steps here as part of this demonstration. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the Credit Scout, and what we're going to do is look for credits that are out in NextGen. Now this screen has evolved over time with a number of different search features that Refund Manager clients have requested. On the upper left, we have the ability to do it based on name. If you have a direct hit you want to do instead of searching a whole bunch of encounters, if you know the encounter or account number, you can go ahead and plug that in. We have a date range, which is by date of service. So if you're looking for just working down a whole bunch of old credit balances, you can kind of chunk it up into various blocks of time. So you're not getting 30,000 results back, which you're never going to go through in the 30 or 60 minutes you're working refunds, so why not just shrink it down? We have some filters in here, and the filters are a great tool for helping you decide what to do with the refunds. So if we click on here, we get our filter screen with our various options. We can filter on a combination of the balances that are on the charges and then the balances that are in the transactions. Okay, and as part of the training, we'll go through what these various filters do. I'm just going to take some defaults for today so that we get some good data to show you. We have some clients that work patient refunds some days and insurance refunds other days, so that's in there. Tom mentioned RefundManager works if you have one practice or multiple practices under management. In this case, I'm looking at a couple different practices. This list is limited by the practices the current user has access to in NextGen. So you don't get access to anything that you don't already have access to in NextGen. Okay, and we have location, rendering provider, all good things that help you find certain types of credit balances that you want to work. A great one that, again, came from our user base was the appointment skip days. And we had a client come to us and say, you know what, if someone's coming in tomorrow, I don't want to send them a refund check today. So can you give us a way to look ahead in the appointment schedule and make sure the people aren't coming in before we do a refund check? Because we can always use that money against the new encounter. So we put this number in there, and basically if you want to look 30 days ahead or 7 days ahead, you put in that number and it'll go ahead and include that in the search for credits. So I'm going to go ahead and click find here, and we're going to get some credits back that we're going to go through a few of them as part of the demonstration here. Okay, so these are obviously all sample accounts that we've set up to show how RefundManager works. What we're seeing at the high level is the guarantor's name and date of birth, how many accounts they're in, and the accounts is really the same as practice. If we look at the second one and we go all the way to the right, we'll see that they're in 2 practices. So again, it's that ability to also look cross-practice and get a financial picture on them before you start doing refunds and moving money around. Again, if you're single practice, it works within your practice. If you're multiple practices, it works within those practices. If you're multi-practice, but a user only has access to one practice, that's all they'll see. So if we want to see a little more data, I'm going to go down and pick one of these that has a patient credit. I'm going to pick William here. So if we want to see more information, we can click this little plus sign, this expansion indicator on the left of the line. And what it'll do is there are up to 5 levels of information in here. The top level being the guarantor, the next level being the practice and account, the third level being who's getting the refund. Is it a particular insurance or is it the guarantor? The fourth level being the encounter. And then if we want, we can go down to the individual charges that have credits on them. So if you only want to refund a particular charge, you can go ahead and expand down there and use the checkbox to determine which ones you want. Now, if we want some more information on a particular encounter, like I can see for this encounter, 1208, there's $54.22 of credit. I can click on this and we get a screen that's similar to the transaction screen on the chart in NextGen. So that'll give you some more information about what's been going on this particular encounter. If we're looking to get a broader picture and look at the overall account, we also have screens that mimic the account summary and financial summary in NextGen. So we can go ahead and expand any of these out. And again, similar to the account summary in NextGen, where I think you double click on them, you get kind of the detailed data under each transaction or charge. And then we also have a financial summary view. And in the case that someone's in multiple practices, it'll show the financial summary here for multiple practices. If they have dependents, it'll show the dependents in here. So it's kind of like the NextGen financial summary, but on steroids. It's taken up to be aware at a higher level. In fact, let's go up here to our one guarantor that is across practices, and we'll see We get the NextGen Financial Summary, NextGen Medical Group, and we get the Peachtree Financial Summary. All right, so you get a really broad view of the financial picture. And again, if you're one practice, it works fine. If you're multiple practices, it takes that into account. So let's say we've done our research and we've looked at the encounter and we've looked at the account summary, and we decide, well, gosh, you know, here for William, we want to go ahead and refund this. Well, in NextGen, you'd normally have to go through and open a batch, create transactions, and keep repeating that as you jump between different accounts. What we're going to do here is we're going to pick the checkbox in the R column for refund, and we're going to click at the highest level, and that'll go ahead and pick all the items below it. Now, if we decided we just want to refund encounter 1208, we can click on that, or just encounter 1209. Again, we can pick on that. So you can go ahead and select which ones you want to refund. For our demonstration here today, I'm going to go ahead and refund all of them. Let's also go ahead and pick one that has an insurance refund. So we'll pick Victor here, and I'm going to expand this out again, and we'll see that the refund is due to Aetna. And just like before, we can click and see the transaction view or go into the financial or account summary to decide if we want to do this refund. When we say, you know what, let's go ahead and do it, again, we don't have to jump around between charts and add transactions and all that. We just simply click a checkbox, and when we give it the go-ahead, RefundManager is going to do all this work for us. In fact, if we want, for the demonstration, we can pick several more of these that we want to refund, and we'll let RefundManager create all that work in NextGen for us. It'll create all those refund transactions on your behalf. Now, one of the other things RefundManager can do, aside from the obvious of refunding credits, is you can take credits and move them to different charges, even on different encounters and potentially in different practices where money's owed. So I have a couple set up here in the demonstration data for distribution. So I have Oscar here, and I also have Bob up here. So let's go ahead and take Oscar first. I'm going to pick the D checkbox to do a distribution. And by the way, there's a filter if you want to get straight to the distributions. Okay, right here where the mouse is. But for the sake of our demonstration today, I'm going to just do it as part of this. So normally when we're doing a distribution, RefundManager works it oldest to newest. So in this case, we can see we have a couple different distributions going on. So everything to the left of the mouse is where money's coming from, and everything to the right is where it's going. So if we look at this first line here that's highlighted, we can see it's going to take money from encounter 1213, SIM 99215. It's going to subtract $236 of the $295 credit, and it's going to move it over to encounter 1214, this other SIM, and this is the amount it's adding. So each line, think of it as a set of transactions of where the money's coming from and going to. So it's going to go ahead and build those transactions for us in NextGen in just a minute. Additionally, we had some clients who came to us and said, you know what, this distribution stuff is great, but sometimes we want to control how the money gets moved. So before we did distribution preview, now I'm going to do distribution matching, and it comes up with a screen where we can basically pair up the credits with the debits. So you were looking here on the upper left at NextGen Medical Group, and there's a $55 credit, which conveniently in the surgery center, there's $55 owed. So something common that happens with practices that have surgery centers is sometimes they'll take a deposit in the practice because the patient isn't yet a patient in the surgery center, and then later they'll move it over. So in this case, we can go ahead and pair this up so it goes to the other practice. And it'll do basically a write-off in one practice, and it'll do a cash payment into the other practice. Okay, so that's just a good example of the multi-practice functionality. So similar to that screen before, everything to the left here is where the money's coming from. Everything to the right is where it's going to. And then if we wanted, if we're having trouble deciding what to do with a particular credit, we can go ahead and task it to the work log, and that'll show up in your NextGen work log as an encounter level task, and someone can go through and research those. Now, we've clicked checkboxes, but how do we get the actual transactions in the NextGen? Well, when we're done, we right mouse and we click Process Selected Items. And it'll bring up our processing screen. At the top, it'll have the number of charges it's going to do work for refunds, the number for distributions. And this work is mainly in the NextGen group. For Peachtree, we have that one distribution where the one leg is on the NextGen medical group side and the other leg is on the Peachtree Surgery Center side. It remembered my transaction codes from work I'd done before. So these are your same transaction codes that get used in NextGen that you have to pick over and over again when you do your refund transactions or your transactions to move money around in NextGen. Okay, so these come right out of your master files. So for the patient refunds, well, it's going to know it's a patient refund because the money's sitting in the patient bucket, or the insurance refunds where it's sitting in 1, 2, or 3. So it'll use those transaction codes automatically. And then for the distributions, there's up to 3 transaction codes that can be used. The top one is if you're in the same practice moving money, you can pick your favorite adjustment or payment transaction code and move that around. And then the next 2 kind of pair up. So this top one is if I'm taking money out of a practice to put in another practice. So on the taking it out transaction, we can pick a adjustment, a payment, or a refund transaction code. And kind of a cool thing it does with the refund transaction code, because you're moving the money to the other practice, is it'll create a refund check to that other practice for you. So, for accounting, they can go ahead and print that out and then, move the money on the books between the 2 practices. And then for the incoming money, so we've written it off or refunded it in this case in the one practice, so we need to intake it in the other practice, so we can use our favorite payment code for that. These transactions get put into your NextGen batches. So from past refunds and distributions that I've done, we have our batches already set up in NextGen. You can create batches from here by selecting the new flag, or you can just use any of the batches that you already have going in NextGen. You can continue to reuse these batches until either they're posted or deleted in NextGen. Okay, in fact, while you're doing that, you don't have to come into the screen every time, and it'll tell you when you can no longer use those batches. So to get RefundManager to do all the work, so 10 refunds it's going to do, we click the buttons and boom, all those transactions were just put into NextGen. We'll go look at them in a moment. It's going to ask about the distributions. It's going to show us the summary. Again, everything on the left of the mouse is where it's coming from. Everything on the right is where it's going to, and each line is basically a pair of those. Okay, so it just did all those distributions in NextGen 2. So it created probably 13 or 14 different transactions for us in NextGen with just a few mouse clicks. So let's pop over into NextGen. And here's that batch that we just populated. So let's go ahead and balance it out and post it. And then we'll jump into a few of these. And these ones that are 0 are the distributions where we used a plus and a minus of the same amount, so the net was 0. So we'll take a look at a distribution, and then we'll take a look at a refund, and then we'll continue to take that refund through to the accounting system and back. All right, so down here, we have a couple of our distributions. So let's go ahead for account 290. And we can go into our account summary. And we can see the distributions that are in there, right? We move 236 plus and minus, we move 59 plus and minus. Let's open up one of the encounters. So in the transaction notes, it put that here's the batch it was in, and it distributed from encounter 1213, this sim, over to encounter 1215, this other sim. So it documents that for you in NextGen, as we can see for both of these. Additionally, it also creates some encounter notes along the way to give you that documentation too. All right, so now let's go in and look at a refund. So we'll do 1209, and we'll go over here to transactions. And we can see here's the refund that was just created. The transaction code was refund patient because the balance was in the patient bucket. Here's the batch it's currently in. And again, similar to the distribution on your behalf, it created an encounter note too. Now it's going to create another encounter note in just a moment when we export it out. So you have that documentation in here. And then later on, when we import it back from the accounting system, it's going to have the check number, check date, check amount in that transaction note field. So you have that documented in NextGen when the check was cut and what the amount was. And where the amount's important is sometimes the accounting system, or when we export to the accounting system, we can roll up several refunds for the same entity into a single check. So you'll see, the check number being the consolidation of those. All right, so we have our distributions, and we're done with those because the batch is posted. We have our refund, which we have it in NextGen, but we need to get it into the accounting system. So we're going to go back to RefundManager, and this could be the same day, a different day, and we're going to find our batches that contain refund transactions. So hang on. Let me and this is what we call a glitch. So let me go ahead and come back in here. Oh, I know. I created the batch yesterday in preparation for the demo. So there we go. All right, so that was entirely user error on my fault. As we say in auto repair, loosen up behind the wheel. Okay, so we can go ahead and pick the batches that we want to export, and we can right mouse and start the process. Now, with QuickBooks, we have a screen that comes up to do consolidation ahead of time. Many accounting systems will do this consolidation in the accounting system. It'll see there are several checks to Aetna or several checks for William, and it'll go ahead and just print one check when the time comes to print it. For QuickBooks, with that integration, we do it ahead of time here in RefundManager, and the way we have it set up is it'll automatically consolidate the patient refunds, but not the insurance ones, because what we found is the insurances get confused by it, but the patients prefer it. If you do want to consolidate one automatically or by hand, we can go ahead and right mouse and say consolidate these, and then the Aetna one becomes one check for the total amount. So we're going to go ahead and export. And what it's doing now is it's opening a connection to the accounting system, and it's creating those refund checks in the accounting system. So as Tom mentioned, the accounting people love this because they don't have to do all that data entry. In some cases, we'll, instead of talking direct, we'll give you a file save as dialog, much like you're saving a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, and you put the file somewhere where accounting can then pick it up and import it in. But the whole key is that they're not having to type in all that information. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, that we finished. And now let's go ahead into our accounting system, which today is QuickBooks. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the check view, and we'll see our checks that were in here. And again, a number of different checks. And then from the accounting side, we just do a quick review. We didn't have to do all that data entry. We pick our batch of checks. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and discontinue, not print some old ones that are in here. We'll just print the new ones for a demonstration today. Load the check stock in the printer and print them out. Your reprints still happen in the accounting system like you do today. So if you get a paper jam and need to reload the check stock, you do all that in accounting. Okay, so now each of these has a check number assigned to them. So let's complete the process by bringing that check information back into NextGen. So you have that documented into NextGen as well. Again, could be the same day, could be a different day. We're going to come in and find the exports that we've done to the accounting system. In this case, we right mouse on it. We go ahead and say import. And it says 7 records up here because we did that consolidation. But really in NextGen, those 7 records, once we expand out the ones we consolidated, were 11 refund transactions. So it's letting us know that it got all of them. And we've closed the loop. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like in NextGen. Now I haven't refreshed my screen yet, but I can do that by jumping back and forth on the encounters. And we'll see we have the check number, check date, and check amount in here without us having to do any of that data entry. Okay, so it closes the loop for you. And as promised, when we did the export, another encounter note was created on your behalf. Okay, it has who the refund was to, the address that was in play at the time, because RefundManager has a refund address book. NextGen has refund addresses that you can set up now. So we document it for you in the note here so you know.
Hey, Joe, I think your audio might have just cut out. Now you're back.
Yep, I'm back. For some reason, I got a blip here. Anyways, so documented for you, another encounter note, and brings it over into the accounting system. So that's the kind of 20-minute overview of the workflow for RefundManager. Credit Scout facing NextGen gets your credits turned into either distributions or refund transactions. The Batch Detective exports those refunds into your accounting system so you don't have to do any of that work. And the Importer, which brings the information back from the accounting system and puts it into NextGen. Again, it streamlines and automates the process. It eliminates tons of data entry, whether it's on the accounting side or NextGen side, and it just makes refunds a more pleasurable experience, which is important when you're, spending time giving money away instead of bringing money into the practice. We want to make that as fast as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Tom.
All right, thank you very much, Joe, for that demonstration. As we go back to, let's see. As we go back to RefundManager, people generally ask us what it takes to implement RefundManager. And it usually takes about 90 minutes to physically install the software in your system and configure it. We also provide 4 or 5 training videos. They're about 10 to 11 minutes in length each. We'll ask that you go through the training videos to understand what the process is for finding the credit balances and issuing the refunds. We'll also give you the user guide to read through as well. And once you get through the training videos and user guide, what we'll do is schedule time to answer any questions that you have with one of our refund manager specialists. And once we get through the questions, what we'll then do is schedule time to actually train you in RefundManager in your test system. And once we go through the training with you in your test system and you feel comfortable with Refund Manager in your test system, then what we'll do is point it over to your production system, and we'll be on the phone with you as well, going through your first few batches of credits in your production environment with you in case you run into any situations that you have questions on through that process as well. So we're with you every step of the way, taking you through the training and through the actual execution of Refund Manager in your production environment. A little bit about Itentive. We were founded in 2003, and our mission is to create. Our mission is to create additional value for your next-gen investment. We, as Chelsea mentioned in the beginning, we work with you to create that value, because we know that when you purchased Refund Manager, when you purchased NextGen, and that purchase is probably, investment has probably grown over the years with regards to upgrades and hardware investment as well. So when we work with you, is get as much value out of that as possible. We have 19 years of experience with NextGen. We have 77 employees in the company, most of which are consultants that move from practice to practice, health center to health center, working with you to get as much value out of your NextGen application as you can. If you take the 2003 and the 19 years, they do not add up. And the reason for that is back in the late 90s and early 2000s, when the business mantra was focused on what you do best and outsource the rest, Itentive started out as the IT department for a medical organization. And during that time, the leaders of the medical organization were going to outsource the IT group. And the leaders of the IT group said, well, if you want to do that, what we'd like to do is provide services back to you. So they agreed to do that. And from that point forward, we've worked with over 350 to 400 clients that use NextGen. And during this time, we've become a strategic partner with NextGen as well. We can provide any one of these services with the NextGen. We can do implementations of NextGen. We do process improvements, so workflow improvements, business process improvements. We have a group of developers that can enhance the templates. We can provide upgrades to NextGen and provide support as well. We have a group of technology folks that can provide IT managed services, which means we can manage your desktops, your laptops, your local area networks, your printers, things like that. We also have our own data center, so we can host clients out of that data center, so we can take over your full hosting situation as well. And then we have group developers that develop productivity tools, of which Refund Manager is one, which we talked about today. And as Chelsea mentioned earlier, we have ChartGuard, which is our business continuity downtime preparedness solution. We also have a version of that called ChartGuard iChiro, which is a long-term chart storage capability. We have created an interface to Phreesia that allows the patients that are sitting in the waiting room and entering their information to the Phreesia tablet to be able to enter in the clinical information on that tablet as well. And then we developed an interface to integrate NextGen with Transworld in order to pass files back and forth to lower the cost of collections. So just a few of the productivity tools that we have developed over the years, and we continue to develop more as time goes on. So now, as we talked about, we can have time to answer any questions that you have, and take the last 10 minutes that we have here to do that.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you, Joe, for the demo. Again, you can type any questions you have in the webinar control panel. We don't have that many, so if you have them, now's your time to ask them. We'll be happy to answer them for you, and we're just going to take them in the order that we received them. So first question, we run with Citrix. Will this still work?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in with that one. This is Joe. Refund Manager was written to work both on PCs and in a terminal server / Citrix environment. It works equally fine with both. We have a number of clients that run them in one mode or the other, and some actually have some people on PCs and some on Citrix. So from the ground up, it was engineered to do that.
Great, thank you, Joe. Next question. Can we still install new versions of NextGen, or will this affect that?
Oh, that's always a great question. Yes, you can install new versions of NextGen. When you're doing hot fixes, there's normally not compatibility issues. If you're doing a major release of NextGen, like going to 5.9, which by the way, we're compatible with, we always ask that as part of your testing from end to end in your test environment that you install RefundManager too, and just make sure that your workflows are the same and you have all your transaction codes and other stuff set up properly. But part of our job and part of what we've been doing with RefundManager for 13 years is keeping it current with NextGen. So that's included as part of the package, is we keep it up to date and we advance RefundManager to take advantage of new features and changes in NextGen.
Great, thank you, Joe. And it looks like this may be our last question, unless any others pop up as we're going through it. But if they do, you see, or if you think of a question later, you see both Tom and Joe's information up on the screen. Feel free to reach out to them at any point with questions. They will be happy to help. Likewise, when I send out the link to the recording, you can also reply back to that email to me, and I would be happy to get your questions answered as well. So next question, how much training is required?
The training for RefundManager is very straightforward because it has a very straightforward workflow, as you saw today. The training regimen normally consists of taking about an hour to watch several videos and look through the user guide. And then what we do is we get online with you in a web meeting and we walk through handling credits, creating distributions, creating refunds, pushing things to your accounting system, getting the information back about the checks. So we'll handhold you through those initial batches to get you going. And what we found is after 1 or 2 batches, normally the practices are all running on their own.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I hope that this was relevant and informative for you. Again, don't hesitate to let us know if you have further questions. And Tom and Joe, thank you both for your time today and for this great demonstration. Hope that everybody has a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, for joining the webinar.